Hey, what's up? This is the Flyover Libertarian Podcast, where two unimportant people from an unimportant place give you the opinion that you didn't ask for.
Once again, I'm Iowancap, and again I am flying solo, though technically we're just continuing my conversation with Isaac from last week, but it was a great one. So, Isaac and I are talking about rightist libertarianism, and we talked a little bit about the party and the direction that we think it should go in. So, let's get into it.
So we've been talking a lot about how libertarianism should be rightist because it should be pro-voluntary hierarchies. But where do you see leftism especially prevalent within the broader libertarianism? And what do you think, this is the better question, what do you think is the cure? How do we deal with it?
Physical removal.
At least ideological removal, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's kind of two strains. You have kind of the Sarwarkian strain of, milk toast, focus on political success at the expense of principles. And you say, well, how's that left wing? Well, I'll explain in a minute. But the other kind of strain is this sort of libertarian socialism, which kind of embodies or includes like your anarcho-communists, your mutualists, and others who would call themselves left libertarians. And these are people in the Libertarian Party. There's a Libertarian Socialist caucus in the Libertarian Party. So you have this outright attempt to infiltrate, this outright attempt to make the Libertarian Party in the sort of left-wing egalitarian image. But the Sarwarkian strain is kind of more just the reason why people think libertarians are socially liberal and fiscally conservative, which I despise that formulation. But I mean, Sarwark and company are very much the reason for that. So we kind of have to fight on both fronts because they aren't the same group of people. However, Sarwark is going to be, very friendly to the Libertarian Socialists because they're part of the party. And that goes back to, like I said, caring more about the party and the popularity of the party than actually caring about the principles. I would rather have a pure Libertarian Party with 5 members, where all the 5 members have good, consistent libertarian principles rather than a party of 3 billion people where one person maybe has good principles, because it's not about the size of the nominal party, it's about the size of the group of people who hold to good, consistent principles. So we very much have to do what we can to kick out these libertarian socialists. We have to figure out some way, and I think if we get say leadership like Joshua Smith, that would be very much a good way on the path to kind of excommunicating these people from the party, telling them, sorry, no, you're not libertarian. Your whole strain of thought is leftist. You don't belong in our party. Go figure yourselves out, right? Form some sort of ANCOM party. I don't care, but just stop associating with us. So we very much have to pretty much just figure out how we can get the party leadership to do that, which is pretty much what you're saying, ideological removal. We're trying to get them out so that we can purge this sort of notion that socialists can be libertarians or whatever from the party altogether.
It's kind of like I know I draw a lot of analogies between this and like the church because that's where I live.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like you've got to, in some ways, purge the heresy so you can teach the confused.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you always got to know the difference between, there's some who are just confused.
Right.
Who just need to be explained, who you just need to sort of like walk them slowly. And there are some people who are intentionally trying to obfuscate. And so you need to be a little bold in opposing that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I do see like there is that strain of libertarian socialism that is kind of confusing to me, but there's a point actually in my mind where I'm actually far more worried with the other kind of libertarianism they're talking about than the libertarian socialists, because I'm like, for them it's kind of like most of the people in Libertarian Party are vaguely capitalistic. They're not going to be taking the party.
Right.
For one thing, they've already got the Democratic Party. So all those types are going over there. They don't need that, they kind of want a state to make this happen. And so I'm not as worried about them. I'm honestly more worried about this sort of cultural leftism within libertarianism.
Yes, that's a big point too.
Yeah, and I've been working up in my mind. We do flyover flybys. You should go to our one of our channel or one of our services and go listen to some of them. They're short podcasts, speaking to you, dear reader. But I've been working on one and thinking of there's sort of a sense in which and I've talked about it a little bit on one of our previous podcasts, that there's a sense in which we say that everyone's really a libertarian, and it's not true, because what people really want to be is they want to be a child without the restrictions of childhood. They want all the advantages of having mom and dad provide for all our needs, put food on the table, without having to be held back by our parents' rules. And that's why that's the sort of libertarian strain that I find the most problematic, because it is, first of all, it's unconvincing. Like why would you try and sell them on that when they can get that with a sort of leftish, I live however I want, unless how you want to live is conservatively, but I can live what I want, I can smoke what I want, drink what I want, sleep with whoever I want. I get all that, plus I get a welfare check. Why do we think that people are going to go for libertarianism when we're not offering that extra check? The truth is, freedom is not being able to do whatever you want because I can do whatever I want. Liberty is about, it has to include personal responsibility, because whenever you move out of the house, you have to start paying for rent. You have to put food on your own table. You don't get to just sit around smoking weed and drinking beer. You have to actually get a job and pay for things.
Yeah.
Liberty includes personal responsibility, and this sort of cultural leftist vision of do whatever you want, order your house and your world however you want, sleep with whoever you want, do whatever you want. It's not possible. It's not possible to order a society that way, stateless or no.
Exactly.
And this is where it turns right back into our sort of conservative values conversations, that the fact is, a family-based society is the only one in which anarcho-capitalism actually works. There has to be a structure. There has to be some kind of structure providing people, what happens when your business goes under? Well, if you have a family to lift you up in that time, you can get back on your feet, this is the only way it works.
You need that structure. You need some structure. And this is why I really, really, really do not like the agorists, because they will, technically speaking, they don't really have a social organization theory. They are just all about, I don't like the state. Boo state. And I mean, we can talk more about Konkin's leftist formulation of economic class theory, but that's kind of not the point right now. But these people just think that structures are bad, and that hierarchies, hierarchies like institutional family, are bad or neutral. Or no, it's the very base of a libertarian society. Christian values are conducive to liberty for a reason, because they're natural, because that's how society is supposed to work. And so, it very much is ridiculous to have this idea that you're just going to do whatever you now this is one reason I really like Hobbesianism, because Hobbesianism is about, okay, well, we're going to have people form their own communities with their own rules. And so all these people who, think libertarianism is going to be smoking weed and drinking beer all day are all going to form the same community, because they think, okay, well, we all kind of have the same culture. So, this is going to work out great. And then they're going to realize day 3 that that's not sustainable. And so then at that point, they're pretty much going to be forced to live by conservative values, not by somebody pointing a gun at their head, because I would disapprove of that, but by nature, but by realizing that the only way for them to survive and to thrive is to organize themselves according to natural family structure.
So we have spent so much time on just like one question. It's crazy. But I just love talking to you. I love hearing what you have to say. So okay, so the LP it does have this sort of leftism that has so permeated it. How do you think libertarians should or should they not engage in partisan politics or voting or party politics?
We have to.
Like how do you think it should work? Should
Um,
we buy in?
yeah. I think there's a line you have to walk, because you don't want to go back to the statist mindset of, you know, my vote counts, and I voted and did my civic duty. Like, when I say that you should vote, that's not my reasoning, right? I'm not going back to that very much statist mindset. Rather, it's strategic. It's something we have to do in order to act out our strategy. Because whether your vote makes a difference or not, whether there's people rigging the game in the background, you at least have this chance that your ballot is going to do something. So you have to take, you just got to grasp at that. If it's the last straw, you have to reach out and grab it. And even if it's not really there or it's too far away, you have to at least try. And the more people you have, the more realistic it is that you're actually going to have effect. So yeah, we definitely have to engage, and you can talk about, well, who should you vote for in the general election? But really, I think the biggest function of the LP and what its main purpose should be is spreading a pure message. It kind of like Ron Paul. We need another Ron Paul to go out there and spread the message in an intelligent way. And so then I would like to basically pretty much say that's why I really like Jacob Hornberger. And I very much think that he's the sort of person we need to go and get that message out. And I'm surprised with how well he's doing within the context of the LP. I would be expecting them to pretty much be putting up another Gary Johnson at this point. But no, he's having a lot of success, and it looks like maybe he might even clinch the LP nomination. We'll see, but he's been having
Very possible.
Yeah, he's actually succeeding. And I think that has to do with the fact that he's so intelligent and that he really understands the libertarian message in a way that Ron Paul did. And so to me, it really isn't important what party you are if you're a libertarian. I mean, if you're a libertarian, you're not going to be a Democrat at all. And you probably aren't a Republican, but I mean, Ron Paul was. And so
the only way I can see a libertarian go all in Democrat is if this was still the 2000s and their main issue was war, and they were really beating that drum that was it.
Mhm.
The issue is anti-war. Then you might have more of a chance to make a dent from the Democratic side. But obviously that's not true anymore. It just took 2 terms of Obama, and suddenly the Democrats forgot that they were ever anti-war.
Yeah, I mean, that's all it takes, because they're not anti-war on principle. They're anti-war when the wrong guy is killing children in other countries.
Yeah, it's true.
And I mean, Republicans do this to a lesser extent, but they never go out fully calling themselves anti-war because they think that's associated with, well, I mean, it is associated with the leftist anti-war movements of like the 70s and stuff. But or was it the 70s or 60s? I can't remember. But yeah, they think it's associated with that. And to me, once again, I mean, you're still talking about people who really aren't consistently anti-war. They're anti-war because, the other guys are communists. And I mean, there's a reason for that. But yeah, so I could see that. But yeah, so we just really need to promote anybody in any party who's giving a strong, consistent libertarian message. And we haven't had a Ron Paul in the Republican Party for a little while, which, again, I think there's a reason for that. There's not really a place for a Ron Paul in the Republican Party anymore, if there ever was. But now we have this guy in the Libertarian Party who really does know the message. And so I'm really holding out hope that we will be able to get a guy out there to spread a consistent message and spread a thoroughly Misesian idea to the masses. And of course, the LP doesn't have as much reach as either of the other parties. That's just the reality. But there are kind of two fronts I think Hornberger has a chance to change minds on, and one of those is just the general LP populace, who, like we were talking about earlier, are just kind of these vaguely capitalist, culturally left people who don't really know where they belong, and they know they don't belong in the Republican Party because they're culturally left, and they don't belong in the Democrat Party because they're, you know, still kind of capitalisty. And so I think those people have a chance to be really, I guess, red-pilled by Hornberger. And on the other front, if he can get a place in a national debate, which, I mean, that's kind of a stretch, but I'm really hoping we can get that this time around. And I think with a candidate like Hornberger, with as much somehow unity we've gotten behind him at this point, I think there's a chance for that. I think maybe we can get him to that point. And if we do, that would probably be the best thing for the libertarian movement since Ron Paul.
You know, I for the first time in my life, I registered libertarian for the first time in my life, leading up to the because I went to our state convention, the Iowa State Libertarian Convention, and I was impressed by a few things. First of all, I was impressed by the fact that it is happening in our state convention. Like, I have to say, if you live in Iowa and you're a lowercase L libertarian, the Libertarian Party of Iowa is perfect for you. Come on in. Like, there is a strong Misesian contingent there. Like, we took a Mises caucus picture at the end of the convention, and I swear it was dang near half the people there that got in this picture. Ooh. And I love my party, Libertarian Party of my state. It is so great. And I have, for the first time, been starting to get involved in that. But like, what I guess I see is there's, if we can truly be a libertarian party, it's kind of like, I guess I see the Libertarian Party as kind of like the gateway into the movement, and the movement is a gateway into the philosophy. And I think there's a point at which that political component needs to be pushed, and that's why I've kind of gotten into the Libertarian Party. I guess I heard people like Tom Woods and Dave Smith talking about how, like, this is the push, this is the way to get people in, and I guess I got it. And the thing is, like, we need, like you said, we need people on both sides. We need people pushing and supporting the Libertarian Party so that we can have a pure guy pushing the message and drawing people in. And then we also need people inside to show them how to do it once they're in. Because, you know, like, we both had that experience where we both came into libertarianism and had no idea what libertarianism was about. We were vaguely like, I want to be free. But we didn't really get the philosophy, and that's a little bit more, it's a very nuanced, smart, intelligent political philosophy, and we need people in the party so that when the new people come in and are like, you know what, I don't know why I'm here. I just heard the LP nominee talking, and I said, you know what, that sounds right, and I'm just here to learn more. And so we need to be there in order to say, yeah, let me show you how it's done. Let me show you how you can be that. And yeah, that's largely where I guess our page sees ourselves, is we're waiting for the people to, once the people come in, we are here to say, all right, now here's how you can do it. You know?
Yeah.
The other thing I was impressed by, and this is I guess my own hobby horse, is that every single we had a presidential candidate debate in the Libertarian
convention, and everyone but two, and now not all the candidates were there, but every candidate there but two articulated an anti-abortion view.
Oh,
and I was like,
great.
yes. I was so excited. Now I like Hornberger. This is me going public with something for the first time. I'm not 100% behind him though.
Oh yeah.
I like him a lot. And if he gets the nominee, I will be ecstatic and I will fall in behind him. But I was not very impressed with if you want to, you should really go find the presidential debate from the Libertarian Party of Iowa. I thought it was very telling, some of the things that came out of it. The comedian who kind of just likes cussing a lot, I forget his name, but he at one point asked Hornberger, so, all right, let's say you get on the debate stage. What are you going to say to make Donald Trump your bitch? That's his words, not mine. Sorry. I know. But those were his words. And Hornberger gave this really bad response where he's like, you know what? I don't want to stoop down to his level. I want to be able to stand on principle. And I'm like, and I just leaned over to my friend who runs a libertarian Instagram page called Benjamin Franklin 1776. I'll link it in the show notes. You should go check it out. And I leaned over to him and I said, then you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Because frankly, that's just not going to cut it. You got to be able to get a little bit intense with him.
You have to roll
like if you're going to, yeah, you need to get in the dirt a little bit, but you need to do so in a way that is consistent with your principles. And that's really what I thought was so good about Ron Paul, is he was willing to get a little he was able to mix it up and to scrap a bit, but he did so in a principled manner. And you got to be able to do that.
I think about his big, I think it's called like the Giuliani moment or whatever, where he went off on foreign policy and said things that people don't hear. And he rolled around in the dirt on that one. He wasn't rude, but he was blunt and straight up. Yeah. And he got dragged for it, but he stood. Yeah, he stood up and he would not back down. And that's really the sort of thing we need. We don't need this niceness.
Yeah. And so I think Hornberger needs to get himself ready. He needs to be able to do that, to get a little feisty. He needs to be able to go a little bit harder if he's going to be able to mix it up and pull any votes from Donald Trump. The other thing I didn't like about him, honestly, and this is really where I guess, all right, here we go. This is going to sound like an endorsement, and I guess it somewhat is. I really like Adam Kokesh. Because he came out with a very strong decentralization message that I think should be the libertarian platform. You know, that the problem is that the United States is too big. It cannot do this. It needs to be broken up into smaller parts. And I've heard the Mises Institute say that this is what we should be pushing for, is for decentralization.
Yes.
And then Jacob Hornberger, he came after Adam Kokesh. And from what I had heard up at that point is I thought that he was against Kokesh on practice, saying this won't work now, in which case I was like, okay, I guess I get it. But he came at him on principle.
Oh wow.
Like he was like, I'm against this on principle. And I'm like, I did not like that, because it was a case where the Mises Caucus candidate is speaking against the Mises Institute.
Yeah.
And so I really liked, because and that's why I really like Kokesh. I don't know if he has a chance or not. I don't know. It's already too late for me to vote for anyone, because I'm not going to the convention, and the Iowa caucus has already passed. But I really liked about him is that I think he can do both. I think he can get a little dirty and mix it up, and I think I like his purity a little more. That said, I'm with the caucus, and if Hornberger, and I really am rooting for Hornberger because I think he has a chance, and because if he gets it, I am fully willing to fall in behind him. I'm just gonna have to throw an asterisk at him every time he brings that up. And also I'll have to throw an asterisk at him every time he brings up the subject of immigration. I don't think he's right there. And,
yeah, I agree with you.
And it kind of bothers me that he's kind of front loading that. He's front loading that issue. And I think if Donald Trump's election showed us anything, it's that people are not on the open border side. So it's not only that I'm not really for it on principle, I'm not really for it on principle. I'm not for it on practice. I think practically it's not a winning strategy, and that's one of the things that you wanted to talk about. So tell me a little bit about, like, what's your position on borders and immigration?
Okay, yeah. So there's a pretty nuanced take on borders. What people, especially new libertarians, don't understand is that there are natural borders. And this goes very much back to the concept of the existence of nations apart from the state. Now, these borders are cultural borders. They're kind of invisible, and they're not like strict lines. And they don't need to be enforced by the necessity of their de facto existence, but individual nations, defined by common language and culture and all these other things that bind people together, you can't just have the influx of people of a totally different nation coming in and undermining your culture and watering it down. It's just healthy, and it very much destroys the natural order. Now, some people take this to the extent of ethno-nationalism, and I don't. I'm not an ethno-nationalist at all. But I think there is a place to say that I am a nationalist in a sense, in that I promote preserving Western culture and Western ideals. And we simply cannot do that if we are constantly inviting people who hate American culture and freedom and liberty into our country. Now, of course, the common libertarian response is, well, you're just asking the state to basically enforce your values. How is that libertarian?
The connection got choppy at this point. The question he asked was, how is that libertarian?
In a private law society, in a libertarian social order, nations are going to be defined by these communities that are formed by contiguous sections of private property, right? So you're going to have communities that are entirely defined by this group of people who own private property, who are of this nation, who are of this culture. And so private property, as per Hoppe, implies the right to exclusion, implies the right to not allow a certain person into your private property or your community formed by various property owners. So the question is that, okay, well, in a private law society, you'll have people to control this sort of flow of people over these private borders. And that's really pretty much the best way to put it, is that you are going to have these private borders that emerge as a result of the institution of private property and as a result of the concept of the nation. But then the question comes, okay, so we live in a statist society. What do you do? And this very much, I do think there's a good response to this. And I like to ask the question, should police enforce private property rights? Because a lot of the libertarians will just, once you say, should the state do something? Once you say, should the state, you instantly get no. Like you get them like, no, the state should do nothing, right? But the reality is the state exists and it has monopolized certain functions.
Mm-hmm.
So what should they do while they choose to monopolize those functions? So obviously, you would want the police to protect private property rights, and you would want them to cease violating private property rights. That should be the libertarian answer. But instead, a lot of the time, it's like, no, the police should do nothing. The police should just not exist. They should be abolished, and private organizations should do these. Well, yes, but if they're going to monopolize this practice, they need to do it. They need to protect private property, and that's just the way it is. So the same goes for borders. If we would have these people protecting private borders in a private law society, in a libertarian social order, what do we do now? And the reality is just the state does have a responsibility then to protect borders. However, the borders that the state has instituted very much do undermine the concept of nation, because um, it divides nations that exist within the broader scope of America, and it institutes these kind of large scale borders, not just the state borders, but the federal borders. So we kind of have these two categories. Because I firmly believe, I'll just add as a side note, that I believe multiple nations, per how I've defined it, and how many libertarians understand it, and even many nationalists understand it, multiple nations exist within America, and they're basically just being all forced to be integrated under the same federal government, under one single national government. So I would really like to see decentralization on this issue. And so I'd like to see states be able to make decisions about who they want to let cross their border. But if you were to ask me, would you rather, so if you were to say we can't do that, we can't have states protecting their borders, we're just going to exclude that from this hypothetical situation. So you have to choose between either federal border enforcement or no border enforcement. I would say, well, yeah, okay, then do federal border enforcement. I don't like that as much. It's a centralized solution. But if you're going to force me to choose one or the other, that's what I'm going to choose. And it's for all the reasons that I've stated about the importance of sort of maintaining this homogeneous culture. And that's not to say you can't let anybody in. And I'm not going to take the typical modern conservative line of like, well, I mean, I like legal immigration, because legal immigration can also be this sort of same thing, the same sort of situation where people can come in legally and do the same thing, that watering down culture, and creating sort of division between the people in this geographic region. So I'm not going to take that line, but I do think that, as I think Rothbard said, that immigration is by invitation only. And of course, that's later in his life, because earlier in his life he was open borders, but he took a pretty good paleo turn later in life. Anyway, that being said, I would also like to clarify, because when people hear this stuff, sometimes they think, "Oh, you're just xenophobic," and no, I very much am not. I love all kinds of people. As a Christian, it is my absolute responsibility to love all kinds of people, and people from other cultures, and people from other countries, and all sorts of things. So I absolutely do love everybody, but that doesn't mean I think that all kinds of people should live in the same place, and we should have people from 5 different cultures live in the same city block, because diversity, yay. No, those cultures should have their own places to be, and people should be able to move around, according to matters of invitation of, oh, here's a person who should come here in order to maybe do some sort of labor, right? And if that person, and if the people of this sort of nation decide, or the people responsible for this nation decide it's good for this person to be able to come in, and if then they should be able to do that. So I'm not against the movement of people altogether, and I'm definitely not pro absolute moratorium on immigration. I just want this issue to be decentralized. And I also think we need to really kind of red pill libertarians on this as well, that borders and such are not a bad thing. They're natural things. They're part of the natural order. But at the same time, we must not go to the extreme of, sort of like ethno-nationalism and stuff. We have to toe this kind of fine line. I guess it's not necessarily that fine by necessity, but because of certain people associated with certain movements, it does tend to end up being a fine line.
I think, I guess I don't make this a main issue of mine for a lot of reasons, because I just don't know it well enough to be fronting it. But I do kind of I'll say generally I come down on the position of like, yeah, like what you're saying is that there will be borders. It's just like voluntary or private borders or community borders, and there will be people who like you said who want to be with people who are like them, and it's neither good nor bad. It just is, and there's just a sense. I think there's a naiveness about the open border position of like, the cosmopolitan libertarian sort of position of like, the mixing without any conflict between all kinds of cultures is like, well, maybe some places that'll work, but not everywhere.
Right.
I don't think it'll work everywhere. There will be people who want to be with their own people, and to force them to accept other people not like them is probably going to cause more conflict than it solves. And it's a really hard thing. But I think especially that second point you made is the big one for me, is that we are living this side of Ancapistan. And this side of Ancapistan, we need to deal with something. And it's funny that you bring up the whole should cops protect private property, because I'm working on a series of Flyover episodes on that exact question. Because there's a reason why I can't get behind the all cops are bad and no good person should become a cop, is that I think there's an issue of, well, yeah, in an ideal world with private law and private law enforcement, yeah, everything would be a lot better. But the fact is, we don't live in that world, and we need to deal with the world we live in. And is an open border world within the context of the world we live in, with welfare, with democracy, and where democracy does, we do live in a democratic republic, and there is an issue that bringing in different cultural backgrounds will mean the voter pool is going to be different. And it seems like they're not bringing in small government tendencies. They're bringing in quite large government tendencies. And that matters, and that's an issue. And also the issue of war still matters.
Yeah.
We live in a world where there's war that causes radicalization, like especially we as our United States government invades the Middle East, we are radicalizing young Middle Easterners who are going to come over and kill people who are completely innocent in the matter, because they never went overseas. They never ordered an overseas attack. They were just sitting here, they were just going to work in the World Trade Centers one day. And,
Yeah. It's very much this comes from Hoppe's speech. I think it's called like right-wing populism, but he says he connects war and mass migration, saying the United States should stop invading these foreign nations, because what's happening is they're bombing all these people and they're displacing a ton of people and causing them to have to run away from their country and go to places like Europe. Why is Europe currently filled with people who are very much not of European culture? Because of United States foreign intervention in the Middle East. So these are not disconnected issues. Now, of course, it's disconnected for us in a sense, because we aren't experiencing all the negative effects of mass migration. But it is connected to that issue. And so it's important that we realize the whole array of evils that war causes. The first ones are obvious, like it's murder. You're dropping bombs on people who are just trying to live their lives, just trying to make enough money to get by to the next day and get food. And some people who are, apart from cultural differences, very much just like us, just trying to live their lives in their communities, and they end up to be afraid that they're not going to make it to the next day because we're dropping bombs on them. And not really we, our government. And so there's that evil, and then there's the secondary evil, or the secondary effect that can be just as evil, where you get these people who are having bombs dropped on them, and you have mostly innocent people among them, but you have a couple of really bad apples. And they all run to Europe and are invited into Europe with promises of welfare and housing from Miss Angela Merkel. And then so you get the situation that you have today, with these just evil men who are raping these young girls, European girls, in their own hometowns where they grew up, and it's just horrific. So there's that aspect of it too, which is just it's horrendous. And also you get these people who now want to institute Sharia law in European countries and totally undermine European culture. Now, I'm not saying that they should be forced to not have Sharia law in their countries. That's their way of life. I understand that. And I would like to find some way to fight against that, but I'm not going to do it by dropping bombs on people. More likely, I'm going to do it by some sort of means of mission trips, sharing the gospel with those sorts of people. But that's beside the point, which is that war is one of the chief causes of the strife in Europe right now. So if you want to stop mass migration, stop destabilizing other countries, is really what it comes down to.
So that's going to have to do it for another episode. But Isaac's most interesting idea yet came in the next segment. So come back next week and listen to the conclusion of my interview with Isaac. If you're liking what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to us at iTunes or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're listening to this. And be sure to head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/flyoverlib, and follow us on Twitter at flyoverliberta1 or at flyoverliberta2, or follow Isaac at @lowkey_XTIAN. Thanks for listening.